As we move forward with this walk cycle animation, I'm going to show you a couple of things to keep in mind and moving forward with this walk animation to make it convincing, and some issues to be aware of as you do your walk cycles. One of the things I am going to show you about this character in particular is a few things you can do. If you notice here in the layer editor down here in the lower right, we have some controls here, and you can turn your controls on and off. They've also have the geometry, which is the you know the polygons here that make up the character, and you can turn those visibility on and off as well. You can also see that the R is checked here, which means that it's referenced. If I uncheck the R, I can select the geometry, but I really don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I can either template it, which makes it a wireframe reference, or you can also reference it, which means that I cannot select it. What this allows me to do is that now with this character, I can drag select all of the I can select all of his control curves here, and all of them are selected. And if you look in the graph editor, you can see that the all of the curves that I have drag and selected are showing up here in the left section of the graph editor here. So those are just some tricks you can do. I also suggest that you do the thing, spend some time and make a select all button. I'm not going to do that right now, but you could go through, and it takes a little bit of concentration here as you go through, and you can you shift select, and you could go through and select each one of these curves one at a time, and then make your button, which was shown in a previous exercise. What I want to talk about is the walk itself. And first thing I'm going to be doing, I'm going to select all of the curves here, and some of them do not have keyframes on it. As you can see, like his main mover here does not have some keyframes. The keyframes that were put on are mostly the foot controllers here, which is to, of course, feet are a major component in walks. And the walking has already been blocked in quite nicely, and it's working pretty good. I noticed that the walk cycle goes on for about 100 frames, which is 2 steps. I'm going to simplify it a bit. I'm going to select all of the curves here, and I'm going to just make basically a one step, which is 50 frames, which is a good amount. That's a good timing for a basic walk. And if you look here, I have all the curves selected. 1 and frame 50, which is where the cycle recycles, is not quite the same. It's a little off. And here's a little trick that I like to do if you want to make the cycle repeat exactly and have your first frame of your cycle and your last frame of your cycle the same, is you go to the first frame. Sorry about that. You go to the first frame here, and you have everything selected, and if you middle mouse drag in your timeline to the last frame of the cycle and keyframe it, you will notice here that the first frame, the last frame, and the first frame are now the same. Now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to delete all of these other frames, because I'm just going to do a one frame cycle for simplicity here. I'm going to delete those, and I'm going to reduce my timeline to 50, since I'm just going to be concerned with just the one cycle. Now again, the feet are working pretty good. I'm thinking that the timing is pretty accurate here. What I'm going to be concentrating on now is the body, which is a major component of the walk. You know, the body is going to be moving through space here. So I'm going to get a good looking view here, and I'm going to just be concentrating on this, his main body mover here. And you can also do this from the side view if you want, which is he's be facing the other way, but I like to actually work in the perspective view as well. So what I'm going to do, if you look at it before, this is the way that it started out, and you notice that his feet are stretching, are being pulled because he's a little higher than his feet need to be to reach the ground. And with this particular model, it's going to stretch and pull his feet away because his feet are going to be IK. IK is inverse kinematics, which loosely translates into the feet will stay down on the ground while the body is going to move independently. But I'm going to go to frame 1, and I'm going to position his body into I'm going to just tilt him a little forward there too as well, and that is the first frame, and I'm going to keyframe his body in that position, and I'm giving him some room. I'm bending his knees is what I'm doing. You don't want the knees to lock all the time. You don't want them to be straight, and basically that's going to make them pop during the animation. So again, the first frame, and I'm going to go to the last frame. I'm going to make that the same. So the body is from frame 1 and frame 50 the same. Now the middle of the walk, which is the opposite feet, the opposite extreme position for the feet, is about frame 25, which is halfway through the cycle. That makes sense. I'm going to make it frame 25, and I'm going to bring his body down as well a little bit. It's not exactly, it's a little, you notice that his feet are spread a little bit more than on this step than on the opposite step, which is fine. You might have a little bit of an uneven walk there, but we can work with that. So I'm going to bring him down a little bit to bend his knees, just like that. Okay, and you notice that he's going to be, since there is a little bit of a difference in the y-axis, and let's just take a look at that. Let's take a look at his y. And that's what's going on here. And we're working with linear tangents as well. We can change that in just a moment. Okay, so we're going to now put his body position for the passing position of his feet. Now notice that he's kind of crouching a little bit. I'm going to go about halfway, about where the passing position is. And the opposite is happening. His feet are a little too bent on this, and I want to bring him up. So in the passing positions where the foot is the foot planted on the ground is going to straighten up, and it's going to give it some distance for the passing foot, the opposite foot, to pass through. So at frame 14 or so, I'm going to keyframe his body there. So he's coming up, and I'm going to push him a little forward like that. And I'm going to do the same thing with the opposite passing position about frame 38 or 39. I'm just going to make it there, and we can adjust some of that later. And you don't want to make the foot completely straight. You want to leave a little bit of bend in the knee. Just a little bit there. Okay. So one thing also is sort of happening is that it's stretching in this position too, when he's reaching for that foot, and he's actually going to be coming forward. So I want to go through and look at some of these places in the walk where his body needs to adjust to accommodate where the feet is planting on the ground. So I'm going to go to frame 5 or 6, and I'm going to move him forward, down a little bit, keyframe it there, and I'm going to do the opposite thing here. We're going to go to about frame 30 or so. Bring him down, bring him forward. Now let's just take a look at that, seeing how the... Now we're seeing some unevenness in the walk as well. I am also going to change his tangents. I'm going to select all the frames in the in the timeline here, and I'm going to change my tangents to spline. And there we go. Now what I'm going to do is go open up the graph editor a little bit, and let's look at that translate. Let's look at that translate Z and seeing what happens when you can identify the unevenness of the walk here. And so he's going up, down like that. And let's move this up, and you want to oops, it's a shift. Sorry, pushing the wrong button there. We're gonna, oops, my mouse is a little nutty there. I have to press the shift. Having little problems with my mouse. Just bear with me for just a second. And now I'm making an even walk cycle here. Let's just take a look at that walk and seeing what's going on. And I'm pretty much just adjusting the walk. Now, have you noticed that when it reaches the start and the end point, I can change that by making my first tangents, you want to make them linear. You want to make, I left that spline. Let's take a look at that again. And let's look at his translate Y. And here's basically what's happening. When the two, the first and the last frame are connecting, there's going to be a bit of a jump there, and you do want to be kind of careful with that. And I'm going to adjust these to make them a little bit smoother. And now you notice that the last frame is going to connect with the first frame, and we don't have any X translation. So let's take a look and see what that's going to look like. And that smooths it out just a little bit. There we go. So he's got the nature of this walk is more like he's kind of almost sneaking in a way, and we can go into the graph editor and look at some of the we can adjust some of those curves to lighten up that sneakiness a little bit. And if I just sort of pull back on the curves somewhat, and let's just see if that helps out a little bit. It might stretch out his legs. No, not really. And now I've got a walk that the body gives it some weight. It gives it it takes the stretch out of the feet, and it's just one more step towards a more convincing walk.